a specially called meeting of the Budget Committee to learn about our fund balance policy. Councilmember Kevin Roten is on his way as former past budget chair, past budget chair. I am starting the meeting and he'll take over when he arrives. So with that, I will turn it over to Director Kelly Flannery and let you take them.
Sure, I appreciate it. And this is our second meeting, specially called meeting on the topic of fund balance. And I think I heard from everyone that was here last time, maybe minus one, that it was the best meeting that they've been part of in the last year. So, yay. So we took the direction we got last time and drafted a policy that we circulated, I guess, probably about 10 days ago now. I hope you didn't think there was any surprises in there. I hope it was reflective of what we discussed, but wanted to take the time today to walk through any questions or concerns on that. And then sticking with the original plan, because there is a proposed addition to the code, this would be a 3-meeting requirement. So hopefully file and make updates. I think it's December 20th would be the first, and then follow that schedule moving forward if there's no other hiccups. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to the Davenport team to walk through the deck.
Thank you, Kelly. And on behalf of our team, my colleague R.T. Taylor here, it's a pleasure to be back in front of the Budget and Finance Committee. What we have today is a slide deck that really is providing kind of a big picture summary of the fund balance policy, or the reserve policy that you have received approximately 10 days ago. That's the document that was distributed really with the policy goals and objectives, the actual written components of the policy, as well as a glossary of how that policy is to be interpreted and read from that perspective. Again, what we wanted to do here is just sort of go through at a high level some of the slides you've seen. We've kind of tweaked and modified a little bit based on the input from last meeting, and also looking at in terms of drafting the policy, we fine-tuned kind of some of the components in there from the concept stage that we had talked to you about in October to what you're seeing in this slide deck today. So with that said, what I'd like to do is walk through the fund balance reserve policy slide deck, and we can go through and discuss kind of the ideas and the concepts as we've incorporated them into the policy document itself. So before we get into the policy language, we wanted to show you a perspective of what we're talking about here in terms of the operating reserve side of the policy that we have tonight. In looking at the operating funds and the historical fund balance, what we wanted to show is go ahead.
Maybe you should use that one. I guess that's Just a reminder, because I see there are some new faces this time from last time, of where we are right now. Our current fund balance policy is 5% of operating reserve. It is silent as to how you reimburse if you draw on those, as well as on the debt service side of the house. There is no policy right now. So what we're cutting here is kind of one policy with two components, the operating funds piece and then a debt service piece. So this is that first piece, which would be your MSD, or MNPS, USD, GSD, what we generally call the operating funds component.
And I apologize for not giving that was a good background component here. This is the operating component, or operating reserve portion of the fund balance reserve policy, and this is the look of how the actual fund balance has been over the past, basically 17 through 21 actual years through 22. We don't have the audit release there yet, but we're looking at that, and then also in 23, how we would look at the reserves or the fund balance number as it would relate to the operating side, which is those three operating funds. In a few slides, we're going to talk about the debt service components portion of this, but what you can see here is we're looking at the way this policy is structured and the way it's going to be looked at and tested. The one important point I would like to share with you on this slide is that the fund balance policy is always looked at or reviewed, and the way it's structured is that the prior year's fund balance is always tested or shown in relationship to the subsequent year's audit or budget. So we're looking at that. What you see here is we've got basically audited figures in column C, through which we have an audited financial statement through 2021. But we're looking at the prior year's fund balance because that's what we know we have going into that year, and we'll want to test and make sure that as we go into, say, a budget year, that our fund balance policy is meeting and benchmarking against the budgeted numbers that we're always looking at for that current or subsequent year. So this slide, so what I'll go through and talk about is how does the fund balance reserve policy work, and what does that, go ahead.
Just a quick question. When you look at 23, it's just the first half of 23 for our fiscal year? Thank you, Chair. Is that when you're looking at 23, then if I read this, then it's just the first half of 23 that you're considering as that balance?
So the 23 number, thank you. Perfect timing, Councilmember Hurt. Yesterday, the Audit Committee approved or accepted the 2022 financial statements. They will be available online, take some formatting in the coming week. So the 623 number is the 2022 fund balance calculation. The column C is what the 2023 budget that was approved by Council is.
Through June.
It was the budget that was approved in June. Does that amount?
Right, through this next June. Okay. It was not for the full year. It's just that. I just want to make sure and clarify that. Okay.
So going to page 3, the operating reserve policy, as we've talked about here, really applies to, and we're structuring this policy to apply to the operating funds. That's the GSD General Fund, the USD General Fund, and the General Purpose School Fund. And really what we're doing there is, as we saw on the previous page, the budget numbers on a combined basis for those 3 funds, we're targeting a minimum balance target of about 17%, no less than 17%, which really approximates 2 months of the Metropolitan government's budgeted operating expenditures. This is consistent, as was mentioned and discussed in our last presentation, consistent with GFOA best practices. We do note that you see that clause to the extent that maybe 17% is not sufficient to minimize or really mitigate the use of tax anticipation notes. There might be a consideration at some point in the future as we go through this policy and kind of get our feet wet and really see how it's working for the metropolitan government. Maybe that number has to be adjusted a little bit. So we won't really know until we really get through that a couple of years of benchmarking.
And so this is one of my couple substantive questions about how this works. And so I think there's like a swirl of 3 related questions. Let me just ask them. And I think one of them might be for Kelly and one of them might be for y'all. First of all, I think for the finance director, maybe you could talk a little bit about any intention to move away from the need of TANs. Like I've heard through the grapevine that the water department has advised that as they execute on their plans, there might not be as much water department funds available. And I know that you're already moving toward using commercial paper for some or all the TANs. And so I'm interested in hearing a little bit about what the pace and scope of trying to get away from TANs is. And then the related couple questions are, the policy doesn't say who would decide whether it would be a higher threshold. I think, and maybe you're going to point me to some language, but I think it's not clear to me whether the finance director whether the policy contemplates that the finance director, in 2, 3, whatever years from now says, oh, geez, 17's too low. We need it to be 26 because we can't do TANs this year. We don't want to do TANs this year, or it's not advisable to do TANs this year. Is that I think the policy should be clear about who does the deciding about whether it's the alternative level. And then in thinking about who would do the deciding, I think it's important for us to have some sort of scoping on how high the alternative could be. You know, if the alternative is there's no reasonable way that somebody could come up with a number high, I'm making stuff up, higher than 19%, then maybe I don't care who does the deciding. But if the scope is such that if we do away with TANs, oh gosh, maybe it would need to be 30%, and it's a substantial departure, then I would think that the council probably doesn't want that necessarily. Well, I think it could impact feelings about who decides. So that's the swirl is, what is the likelihood of having to, and pace of moving away from TANs completely? Who decides on a different threshold? And what do we think an alternative threshold would end up being as this is written right now?
And for the listening audience, TANs is tax anticipation notes. I can't remember if we defined that or not. Good.
So I'm going to spoil the deck, but at the end, you'll see with the most recent fund balance estimate that we received yesterday and part of the 2022 financial report, we meet the goal of eliminating TANs, as you'll see, is laid out in the policy when we get to the debt service side. So the plan is to do that now, but the struggle with TANs and the requirement, it is, you have to be cash positive every single month. And so it's the timing of payments, and it became, I don't even say difficult, almost impossible to create a policy around that because that debt service number changes every time. So that's how we got to 50%. But I appreciate the question. I would love to say that the finance director could just change that every year, but that doesn't feel right either. And so I don't know how to scratch that itch.
My feeling is, and this gets to the scoping, like it might be reasonable for the finance, nobody's heard this before, I have no idea whether anybody agrees with this, but it might be reasonable that the finance director could unilaterally say a 3% variance. I'm making stuff up, but if it's going to be more than 3%, that council's got to approve it. Just something that where there's some room for reasonableness, but if it's changing how things are working extensively, that we need to revisit it. But certainly, it shouldn't be that there could be a material change in the threshold at the discretion of a single person. I don't think.
And Kelly, if I can sort of add to the discussion here, is there are, in the fund balance policy, there are, on the next page or so, even when we talk about use of fund balance, there are triggers and sort of approval process. I mean, it's subject to council approval based on certain parameters for either budget stabilization or for unforeseen circumstances. One of the thoughts we see a lot in other policies, and maybe we just assume sort of the process here, if this is adopted by council, is that, if there's a recommended change, which would mean you would have to add fund balance or increase the number, which is a financial impact at some point. Maybe that's based on analysis. I'm sort of speaking out here with Kelly, concept that the finance director would bring the rationale for it and the basis and kind of the impact, and any change in the policy would be a subsequent approval or approval of a new policy document or a new policy level. I mean, we see that a lot in other policies where the government, the elected body, whether it's a council or a board, if there's no adoption of the policy, any change in the policy may be kind of brought forward, and maybe it's...
Right, but as drafted, it wouldn't be a change of policy to pick a higher number, because the policy says the minimum target is 17% or something else. Right. So it wouldn't be a change of policy. So you guys don't have to have the answer now, especially if it's going to be 3 readings. Definitely don't have the answer now, but if y'all could think about who does the deciding on whether it's the first part of that or the second part of that for the minimum target.
think we can talk that through and sort of.
We'll figure it out.
And I'll spare you the same comment on the next, when you get to the debt thing.
So while we're on this slide, that's a very good point in terms of thinking about what that target should be and how that would change. But what we're talking about here, at least on this operating reserve component of the policy, is that it applies to the 3 operating funds. It's measured basically as a percentage of that, and we're talking about, just in context of the FY23 budget, what that number would be. It's about $433.7 million, just talking in aggregate numbers, when measured against the 23 budget level. Of this amount, and again, on the second page, we'll talk about use of the fund balance, but of this amount, we're saying that about 30% of it is allocated towards an operating reserve component. That has some special features of it that could be designated or designed to function as an operating budget stabilization reserve. And what we mean by that on the next page, perhaps if I can go into it, that component of it being used for budget stabilization. So when we look at that, the operating budget stabilization reserve component, about 130 million of that could be accessed or sort of bridge funding in a concept to offset projected declines. And we're not talking about declines in growth, like if you expect 3%, but you're only getting 2.5%, that's not a decline in what we'll call a revenue actual decline from the previous year. You're just getting a slower growth rate. What we're talking about is an actual impact where, for example, if you have a pandemic impact to a hospitality sales tax stream and it drops off a cliff, that's the intention of this kind of budget stabilization potentially in that respect. That's sort of your first line of thinking about, okay, if we're projecting from one budget year to the next, this might be a stabilization impact, use of it, not necessarily an immediate, this is different from an unforeseen circumstance, or what we'll call a component of use, which means, you absolutely have hit the wall within a fiscal year and you've got to address it with immediate funds. So for the budget stabilization piece, if we're thinking about that from one budget year to the next and want to kind of bridge that decline in revenue, to kind of ease into it within a cycle or two. There are 4 triggers we've built in, and they're in more detail in the policy document, defined in certain characteristics. The first one has to be with basically an indication of a recession, the national GDP decline. Generally, the definition of a recession is that's declining in the 2 most recent quarters with available data, and you're heading down that path in conjunction with a revenue decline. You can also have local housing prices falling by more than 10% year over year in the prior 24 months. Year over year change in unemployment could also be a trigger. Looking at that, or year-over-year change in employment. They sort of go hand in hand, unemployment and employment figures. Looking at a change there, declined by at least 2 percentage points. So to use it for budget stabilization, really there are some, we'll call parameters around that. When we're thinking about from one budget year to the next, it's designed to give you that flexibility if you need it with a revenue decline, but it's also designed to put some belts and suspenders on, not having it be so easy to access and just being the first access. Let's just tap the fund balance for budget year change.
Councilmember Hurt. You got your mic.
There is no recession. What happens to the funds?
They're going to be there. It's going to be your unassigned fund balance that sits there that helps you, one, protect your credit ratings and your physical integrity there, and also help you cash flow such that you don't have.
So would it be accruing any interest?
That's also the third piece of having a fund balance, is that you're going to get the benefit of the interest of that income back to those funds.
And what happens with those funds?
Those funds are general investment use of money and property in the budget. When you look at investment income in a budget that's created, you would generally, in this environment now, have the potential to have that investment income being used in the budget year.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Drift.
What is the worst case scenario that you've seen, and what kind of guardrails would you do to protect? Because you got several scenarios. Clearly, we went through COVID and we threw some other things. Is there a percentage that you say, well, this is a fund balance for a typical, recession, but is there any combination that would create this worst case scenario that you would want to anticipate through years of experience? And what kind of guardrails should we build against something like that?
I'm going to take a sec. I think that's what the budget stabilization component is trying to do.
Right, yeah.
I think the pandemic's kind of a bad example because it did touch economy and everything. But let's say we had a natural disaster that tore through a fraction of the community and we needed money to rebuild. What the budget stabilization component does is it says, so, and by the way, in my mythical scenario, the economy keeps rolling and all is right with the world, that if we had $100 million in available fund balance, we wouldn't use 30 of it because it didn't meet this criteria. So it kind of creates a double scenario guardrail, right? Like
So it's an incremental amount based on top of the fund balance.
It's like a
that's
super,
based on
super
worst case.
reserve. Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get to. How do you segment that? What part is segmented for that unique need?
I think the basis for, or really the basis for looking at that, the 30% level of that fund balance, I mean, it is, when you think about it, can be tied to certain local revenues in terms of context there, but it's not really written that way. It's not really where we're going with that. But, there's also an aspect of how much of that fund balance do you want to use to help stabilize the sort of what you see as a revenue decline. Knowing that you have potentially other tools and mechanisms that you can use down the road. I mean, when you see a revenue decline, it's not necessarily, a local government's first instinct to say, we've got a bad economy, we've got potentially, a population that's dealing with these issues, so we don't want to go adjust the tax rate in that given year. But what this budget stabilization reserve is designed to provide a certain amount that's available without really depleting the big corpus of the fund balance in a significant way. 30% is when we look at the local revenues in those three funds, the property tax revenues, sales tax revenues, we looked at about a potential decline of up to about 6% on those local revenues that are within your control. That is basically the property tax, which is the biggest piece of those. So that was sort of the rationale. Do you see, can you see a 6% decline in a number from one year to the next? You certainly could potentially, but I don't think you see that often.
Councilmember Mendez and then Councilmember Hurt.
I was just going to comment to Councilman Druffel, wearing my insolvency guy hat. To me, the 30% is pretty reasonable. If you think about the total reserve as 2 months, that means 30% is just a shade over 2 weeks. So that's saying if you have a decline in the economy and one of these other things happens, it's on the designated list, and like, okay, gee, now's the time when we should hit our reserves. We still need to be able to readily pay our bills. So to me, I view it from 100,000 feet as essentially, if stuff goes bad, we're willing to knock 2 months down to a little less than a month and a half in order to still be fluid enough, cash rich enough to pay bills without worrying about it. And I don't know if you guys think that's a bad way to think about it, feel free to let me know. But that's the way I was thinking about the 30%.
I think the other thing, that's a good point, Mr. Mendez, but the other thing we got to think about as well, there's a replenishment mechanism. So to the extent this is tapped, either for budget stabilization or for, say, a natural disaster, we've had bad weather events just go through the further southeast. If there's a really unforeseen natural event that really causes an issue, and you have to tap that, we also have to remember part of the policy says and indicates that we have to have a plan to replenish it over the next 3 years subsequent to that. So it's sort of, that's the other part of the guardrail as well. How much do we potentially get into it in terms of tapping it? But then we know that if we do that, we've got to think about the plan to replenish it back.
Councilmember Hurt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I guess that's similar to my question or the cash that he's talking about. I guess I'm speaking to the surplus. It seems like we've been pretty conservative over the last couple of years, especially with COVID. So when we were preparing for basically a recession and a downfall and all of that, we basically overcompensated for it. So is there going to be a policy for the surplus funding that may exist? Because the recessions that you are anticipating, if they don't happen, then we still have the funds and we are collecting. I mean, is that making sense?
So the fund balance calculation is the annual assessment of revenues minus expenses. So it is what is left over. So when we conservatively projected revenues and we exceeded them, that leftover is what is comprised of that $623 million number. This policy will just define how we allocate those resources going forward.
Okay, so what if those resources increase? I guess is
so
what
this policy, regardless of what the number is, this policy allocates how those dollars should go.
Okay.
And so this, if you look at the waterfall kind of in your mind, we're filling up the operating fund reserve bucket first. And then if we make that 17%, which we're going to, then it goes to debt service. And if we're able to make that 50% debt service annual payment and there's anything left, we'll get to that last slide. That's the decision point. How did we want to treat that money that was left over? And we heard from this group last time that there was interest around, should it go for 4%? Should it go to capital? Should it go, there's a third thing, but I can't think of it right now. And so that would be the decision that would come as part of probably the budget process every year, is here is that delta. Council decide how you want to allocate it because you've created this policy. But that 1 year, that number could be zero. It should always be zero, right? We're not budgeting to build fund balance. We're not in that space anymore. But if there was a space where there was money left over, and 1 year it could be $1, and the next year it could be 10 million, how are we going to treat that every time? And that's what this policy does when we get further down the waterfall. We've only made it to the first slide so far.
Okay. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
No problem. It's a good question.
Councilmember Mendez. No, okay.
Okay, so this is the mechanism for the use of fund balance. Budget stabilization, based on meeting certain criteria. If we have to, we've got a targeted amount that we've got allocated for that. For unforeseen circumstances, again, that's the second component, really unusual, unforeseen, one-time emergencies. On the next slide, page 5, this is a look at the trends of the debt service fund balance. And really what we see here over time, again, the same concept. We're using prior years' debt service fund balance in connection with the subsequent years, either actual or budgeted figures. And you can see right now at 2023, we're standing roughly at about $127.8 million versus that budgeted debt service expenditure. So the proposed fund balance reserve policy for the debt service fund balance is that looking at the combined debt service funds, we're talking about the GSD General Purpose Debt Service Fund, USD Debt Service Fund, as well as the school debt service fund. Looking at a minimum target, again, this is about 50%. We're targeting the 50% of the budgeted debt service. So if we look at that number, we're going to think about it and think about these policies going forward. As the budget changes, this ratio is going to be consistent with the budget, but those numbers will eventually kind of move with the budget on a going forward basis. The debt service fund balance, because of the nature of the way those funds are classified in the audit, We're looking at the unassigned fund balance, if there's any in those funds, but those funds really, the committed debt service funds in the audit as shown, really function as kind of an unassigned fund balance for those funds. They're just committed for the debt service funds.
I have a question from Councilmember Mendez.
I want to understand, I think I understand some of the practicality about the way this works with when we make debt payments, but I want to say it out loud to see if I'm right. So first of all, the 50% is measured 1 day per year, right? It's June 30, the end of the fiscal year is when it's measured. You're not obligated. Policy wouldn't say have 50% on August 1 or September 1 or October 1. It's measured one time per year.
Yeah, the fund balance calculation is only made one time a year, an audited one, and that would be the one we would use.
And I understand we make a substantial amount of debt payments is it either on July 1 or in July?
So it's kind of smoothed out a little bit. So we always had them July 1. Treasurer Bosch, who's joining us today, I think immediately on day one was like, that doesn't work because we don't get our property tax payments in July. So every issuance that we've done since, as well as some refundings, we've moved the payment to 1/1. So it's not as severe as it was, but it's still practically 7/1 is the larger of the two.
So the anticipation would be that you want on June 30 to have the 50% meet the policy as of June 30, and then and then some of that will get spent in July on bond payments?
Yeah, so like I said, the state comptroller requires that positive balance at every month, and that's really what we're trying to solve for. But the most elegant way to do it was the 50% because, if this was an enterprise deal, we'd be talking about 100% and north. But because property tax is such a stable revenue source and sales tax to some extent, it's just to ask that burden of taxpayers to sit on 100% just didn't seem accurate. So it's not a guesstimate made up number, but it's kind of the easiest number to come up with a methodology to support. So yeah, it would be.
And be cash positive every month through the year.
But the thing with the financial report is it's not like Janine's team, the chief accountant, could, fudge a number on June 30th. There's so many ticks and tats that go into that and transfers that we wouldn't really have the ability to, on June 29th, like, let's make sure it works. We kind of don't know we have a ballpark-ish, but it's such a tricky game. So it really is kind of wait till the CAFR comes and see what it is more than anything.
All right, thanks a lot.
So as we're talking about here, the 50% target based on the 2023 budget is roughly about $204 million at that level. Again, use of one fund balance reserve, what we're talking about here, these are definitions when we're looking at, and we wanted to bring these to the attention here of one-time emergency uses. These haven't changed from the last slide deck and last concept that we're talking about. Any unusual or unanticipated or unforeseen, essentially one-time emergencies. We're saying that if you meet those criteria that, for which you need to keep essential services or infrastructure in place for continued service, maintain delivery of continued delivery of service, we want to have the ability to access the funds in that kind of emergency. What do we mean by that? Just to give you an example, COVID-19 pandemic. Another example could be a big natural disaster event, when we think about something like that.
What do other cities do proportional to what you're recommending or discussing?
Other cities, the metro government is one of the most unique, forms of budgeting we've seen in terms of the 6 funds, specific debt service funds as well as general funds. So when we look at other cities and local governments that may not have the complexity of the funds, we routinely see, depending on the size and the cash flow needs of those governments, anywhere from, we'll call it the operating fund, which may include debt service, anywhere from that 2 months, which is 17%, to upwards of some local governments have 20 to 25%. When you think about that. In our client base in North Carolina, Ms. Kelly, as you remember, in Charlotte, they're required by the local government commission in North Carolina to maintain a mandated fund balance level. And then over on top of that, we routinely see that 16, 17%. So when you look at the two there, we've got a lot of fund balance in those circumstances. So this is not out of the norm in terms of that concept, and especially for the size of this local government. We think that if these levels meet the conditions of really moving away from TANs, then it's the right level to be at. So one of the other big pieces of this policy, we talked about the uses and potential circumstances for those uses. The replenishment and review, when we're looking at this fund balance reserve policy, a really good policy has a mechanism for replenishment. That is to say, if we had to tap into them, and we made the conscious decision to do that based on the circumstances outlined, that we want to have a replenishment mechanism such that if your operating reserve or debt service fund balances that we're talking about in terms of the reserves here fall below the minimum levels, we're requiring or sort of saying in a policy format, we've got to develop a plan to restore those amounts within 36 months. And that's designed to be 3 fiscal years of working through and kind of replenishing. That could mean you've got a budget for replenishment. We've spread it over 36 months as kind of the starting point, because if that was an amount that caused undue hardship for replenishment, we want to define and say, okay, we can go beyond 36 months, but we want to do a reasonable time period, and that's the key word. Reasonable could be 4, 5 years, but we don't want to say we're going to get this over 20 years. That's really not the intention of this policy. So that's where we're setting we'll call a benchmark time frame for replenishment, but also a little bit of flexibility that if you need to go a little bit beyond that, we've worked that in there. The annual review, we talked a little bit about the annual review, and we've seen the benchmark sort of on a historic basis. But really, when we're looking at this annual review process, we're looking at also, we have to think about this as a live target. It's not a static target that says once we put that number in, it's good to go, because we're measuring it against percentages of expenditures going forward. As the budget changes over time, the annual review really is designed to look at during the fiscal year that you really completed, the most recently completed fiscal year. So right now we're looking at 2022. We've got that number versus the 23 budget, so we know we're at the target levels. But as we think about the estimated fund balance during the budget process for the subsequent fiscal year, we're going to go from the 23 fiscal year to the 24 fiscal year. During that budget development process, we've got to think about, okay, let's look at our target levels, and are they still in compliance? So that's an annual review component during the budget process. Any additions? We're talking about if we're slightly below that number, we need to put in a little number, a figure there. Additions would be added to during that budget process to maintain compliance, because we always want to be in compliance and demonstrate that we're in compliance of it with the next ensuing budget year, so that by the time you get through the budget process, you're going to have an estimate for fund balance by that time that you can use. And then looking at the budget for 2024 as it's developed, we're going to say, does that meet the target? If not, then we've got to make adjustments to such that we put the right number in there and budget for that right number, addition to the fund balance going forward. So this this slide really addresses the application of surpluses. And I think that was the question that Councilmember Hurt had. When we look at this slide, again, the priority of the waterfall, we're looking at that surplus at the end of the year. We have first to the operating reserve, up to 100% of that number can go to fill up the operating reserve. And if we don't need it, then we go up to 100% to the debt service fund balance. If we don't need that, then we have that allocation for specific uses as outlined in the policy. What I can talk about here, we've got that footnoted, the three sort of targeted uses, because I think we took the feedback from the last session, was that debt reduction. That
How
could
did
be
I forget debt reduction? That was the one I forgot. It's my favorite one.
debt reduction. The second one is capital expenditures, or at least not in this order, capital expenditures, debt reduction, and or if it's determined that, and of course, this is not one person's determination, but when you bring forward the determination that, hey, we need to do another reserve, maybe we want to bolster the reserve and just create a dedicated economic development, economic impact reserve or something to that effect. That is the other sort of bucket that could be filled within those categories. And again, that would be if the creation of another reserve is the mindset going forward, then that's sort of where the policy would then be amended or kind of adjusted.
I would also be remiss if, for the love of Tom Cross, because I know he's not here, but there are other reserves that we have that we don't have policies around. So I'm thinking of the judgments and settlement reserve funds. So that could be an option. When we're talking reserves, it doesn't necessarily mean we have to create a new one, but we have some other ones that we, council, if chose to, could give it to those existing reserves.
Councilmember Mendez.
On this one, just in case, for when Councilmember Hurt goes and watches the video, I would just want to repeat something that Director Flannery said earlier. This idea of what to do about the surpluses should theoretically only be temporarily interesting. The first, from all the years Berkeley, Councilmember Allen and I have been in office, except for the last two, that's been a relatively uninteresting conversation because finance projected revenue to within, $10 million, $20 million very accurately. And with COVID passing, we should go presumably back to an era where it's accurate. And this waterfall should be a lot less interesting to talk about other than these couple of years we're in right now.
Councilmember Toombs.
Thank you. In terms of the fund balance and any interest that accumulates from those funds, would there be restrictions on the use of that interest?
So the fund balance calculation is, we're government, so we do fund accounting, but we pool all of our investment and then it goes allocated. So as part of, if you open the CAFR and you know how we saw those columns yesterday, it's already kind of in the number.
Okay.
So it's not that the $623 million is sitting in a separate pot for us. It is, again, one day in time. So it doesn't, if it were July 1, we probably wouldn't actually have $623 million in cash because our real money comes in, as we talked about in the winter.
So the next, and this is sort of the last slide, the kind of pulling it all together. So when we're looking at the policy targets, or the fund balance reserve policy and the FY23 targets, and again, this is based on the most recent completed fiscal year here for 22, the proposed reserve policy would be measured in that concept. We're looking at the reserves we had for the most completed fiscal year, testing against the budget, or, when we look historically, when we have the audit, we're going to test and make sure that it's in compliance with the audited figures. The graphic to the right shows you, just for comparative purposes, for FY 2021, at the time we created this most recent audit that we had, you could see where the fund balance levels were. the debt service fund balance in light blue, the general and schools, the operating fund balance there in dark blue. What we've shown to the right of that, with the policy targets and kind of the construct that we have in this policy and the numbers we've talked about, that fund balance target and the levels there we're looking at takes it from 2021's levels of just over 400 million and thereabouts, to the level of about 637 million. And you could see the composition there between the operating reserve, which is the general operating funds, and then the debt service funds there in the light tan. And one point, again, we're talking about that operating reserve. The budget stabilization reserve is within that operating reserve. It's not over and above that operating reserve. So of the 434 million, that 130 million budget stabilization reserve is in that green column there.
Question, Councilmember Mendez.
Thanks for bearing with me. My substantive questions were limited to what I mentioned before, so I know you guys are going to think about that. I've got an ask and then just a comment that's really more for council members than y'all. The ask is, and I think you did part of it on this last slide, I'm wondering whether you guys could go back to the beginning of 2019 and assume that this policy was in place beginning in 2019, January 1, 2019, and do a side-by-side between what we did in the budget for each year and what would have happened with the policy. And I know COVID's in the way and make it messy, but it would be helpful to see how it would work.
It wouldn't.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I understand what 2019, the answer for 2019 is going to be, we couldn't have done the budget. But I think it's useful to show that if this policy had been in place in June of 2019, we couldn't have, like, the budget would have violated the policy completely.
Would you be okay if we did it by fiscal year? So we did July 1, 08, or 2018 through 6/30?
Yeah, that's more artfully said. I want it starting with the budget we passed in June of 19, so that's FY20.
Okay.
Going through what you do on this last slide of what does that mean for coming up in June of next year. And if you could do it with numbers instead of bars, bar graphs, I'd appreciate that.
The challenge with doing the 24, we don't know what the 24 budget number should be. So it's going to be a little bit of an estimate there because we're always basing it on.
That's fine.
And then we also will be basing it on, when we file the budget ordinance, we have the fund balance estimate as part of that. Mm-hmm. And so we only have 4 months of collections right now for 23. So to have a fund balance estimate.
Maybe for the upcoming year.
We can use it.
Just you'll figure out some way to show it. I believe in you.
It's going to be amazing.
Councilmember Mendez, if I might ask, would it also be instructive to say, what if we hit that year and we had the right fund balance in place? How would this have worked? Is that a useful question?
Well, then we would have bought a bunch of one-time expenses according to this policy.
Right.
Okay, so the comment, and this is, I'm acutely aware of being term limited, and I believe, with the exception of Tom Edelman, who was forced to do his complaining privately to himself, like I am since 2018 the chief complainer about fund balance in this city. And everybody else in the room who's complained about it didn't exist as a Metro employee that long ago. So with me being term limited, I have to get this off my chest. This policy needs to address, and I think it does address, the risk of a mayor's office, as was the case in 2018 and 2019, conducting the raid on fund balance as well as the risk of council members, the council as a whole, conducting a raid on fund balance, which has been more the case over the last couple of years. And in a policy, really, everybody needs to think about the policy as providing guardrails for both scenarios. As the chief complainer about fund balance since 2018, I think it's important for me to share with the folks who are going to be here next term that while I think this policy is a good idea and that we should have one, my concerns about fund balance have never been about fund balance per se. Going back to 2018, fund balance was an easy way to identify how the budget was busted and broken, and the clue that set me off in 2018 to become the chief complainer was the fact that the fund balance was declining when revenue was up, and so it didn't match up, and I had to go play Easter egg hunting through the budgets back then to figure out what was being hidden, tucked away, shaded, smoke screened to make it so revenue was up, but fund balance was headed down. And that's what led to my complaining. But fundamentally, it's not been about fund balance. It's been about the fact that, first and foremost, our budget as a moral document needs to provide sufficient funds for schools, safety, and opportunities for everybody in Nashville to thrive, and that we need to do those things. And it's always been, and fund balance needs to be fixed while we do it. What was the problem in 2018 and 19 is we didn't have enough money to do the things that we needed to do for the citizens of Davidson County. My concern about the focus only on a fund balance policy, and I think it's a good idea, I'm in favor of it, but the problem with focusing only on it is that we know that historically this city is a low tax environment. That's part of the ethos of Tennessee, the ethos of the city. We are an overall low tax environment. And I continue to hear all the cool things that we want to do as a city. I've heard the director of NDOT in the last month talking to a community group where she itemized out a bunch of stuff that's on her agenda to do in the next couple of years. And I was keeping a mental tab, and it came up to something like 20 or 25 cents of property taxes of things that she doesn't do now that she wants to do, and we ain't doing it unless there's enough revenue to pay for it. And the same goes for what we talk about with when we have to keep dealing with homelessness, not with one-time money, but building into the budget, and schools always, and sidewalks and everything we have to talk about, and coupling the fact that we don't have policies in place that have metrics around wages or how many sidewalks we want to build or what we want to do for schools, without thinking about a policy of what the minimum thresholds are for those things that require money, but installing a policy that has a handcuff on overspending, we set up a scenario where the council may find itself in the next 4 years having installed these brakes on spending, these handcuffs on spending. But if there's not a commitment that we want to make sure to stay current every year on wages for employees and sidewalks and schools and funding homelessness programs, et cetera, then it's what little power the council has in the budget process already dwindles further. And so I think the policy is a good idea, but having a policy that only a written policy around handcuffs on spending, brakes on spending, guardrails on spending, without being committed to certain metrics on the services side, I think is a risky proposition. It makes me want to say fund balance policy for the sake of fund balance policy has never, ever, ever, ever been my goal, as I've been the chief complainer about it over the last 5 years. Thanks for indulging me.
Thank you. I think those are good points. I would add to that, I think an important part of not getting into that box is working on a 4-year look ahead so that we can say, if we're going to do this, then at some point we have to adjust income some way or make decisions. And I think that is in the works as well, and I'm glad to see that happening.
Yeah, I would I think that's a great point. We would like ideally to see the budget built from the ground up to see what services we want to provide, we need to provide, and build the revenue structure from the ground up rather than being irrationally tied to it's a bad idea. As you know, Councilman Allen, in the last election, every council member that voted for an increase in the tax rate, except for one, got reelected. And that person's problem was not the tax rate. It was not politically unpopular to have an appropriate tax rate.
To provide services needed. Thank you. I think I'll turn it back to Director Flannery to wrap up if I don't see any other questions at the moment. Oops, I do.
So close.
Close. Councilmember Toombs.
Just a quick clarifying question for the viewing audience. So our total fund balance is what? 633?
In the operating funds, which is USD, GSD, and
Right.
schools, is 623,478,087 as of 6/30/2022.
Okay, and that encompasses the debt service fund?
No, the debt service
separate.
funds are 127,839,964.
Okay, so looking at the proposed policy, we would be moving money over to hit that 204 mark for the debt service fund?
That's exactly right. You would see, if this policy were approved as passed, you would see a budget appropriation line moving, was that 80 million? Really good at math. It would look like a fund balance draw, but it would really be moving from operating fund balance to debt service fund balance.
So would we be looking at some amount of surplus and implementing those different categories that were?
There could be, yeah. We won't know because the way the policy is written is we will look at for the next year, we will look at the 2023 fiscal year 2023. So the year we're in fund balance estimate and then the 24 budget estimate. And
Okay.
like I said, we only have 4 months of revenue so far, so we don't really have those projections.
Okay, so the actual implementation of this wouldn't happen until next year?
The expectation is that every time a budget ordinance was filed, the annual budget ordinance doesn't contemplate a supplemental or anything, this would be mathed out. We would run it through the filter and see where everybody landed.
Okay.
Councilmember Syracuse.
Thank you, Chair. Translating this now to an ordinance, what's your thoughts on timing of that?
So I appreciate the flag from Councilmember Mendez. That I don't know that I'm usually pretty good at figuring it out right away. I don't really know how to fix that one yet, but we'll work on that. But I don't think that warrants another special committee meeting. I think we can do that offline and file something. Margaret, the filing deadline is the 9th for the. I think that's what we're going to try and strive for. So first reading on the 20th, and then it would be 2 more after that. Is that right? January 21st.
Councilmember.
Chair. The sponsor would probably want to see that before.
I mean, I guess. But would you like to be our sponsor?
Since it will come to me, I will want to see it before I put my name on it. So.
Sure.
And I'm sure a few other folks on this committee would like to see it before I put my name on it. So.
Yeah, and I'm remorse that Councilmember Johnson isn't here because she had a lot of thoughts around the extra bucket, and I really appreciate her thoughts on that because I'm not sure that we've scratched her itch or not. So.
Councilmember Mendez, short, we're trying to leave.
Yeah, I'm just making the point that with it being 3 readings, it's amendable. I think when we've done other policies like this, it's been amendable all the way to 3rd. So there's plenty of time to iron out details.
Good point. Any other comments, questions?
I would just add, well, it would be nice to get it done. Really, the goal would just be get it done in advance of the next budget filing, but I would love to get it off and move on with life. But there is no real urgency.
Yeah, and that's what my main question was, when do you plan on wanting to get it done by? Because it'll get somebody want to hold it up or something. I don't want to be running into this in March, if you know what I mean. So I'd like to, yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to move on.
Great. We appreciate the work on this. I think it's very helpful. Chair, do you have anything else you want to add? from your seat back there.
No, just thank you. So traffic was terrible, and I appreciate you getting up in the chair for me. I
Happy to
appreciate
do
it.
it.
Thank
Happy to
you.
do it. All right, I think we're adjourned.
Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.